Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So my story's almost over. Just kidding. It's a long way from being over because I'm going to talk about everything pre-diagnosis, which I've already done, and then in between being diagnosed and pregnancy, and then I'm going to talk about my lupus pregnancy, and then I'm going to talk about my journey into remission. So unfortunately this took 5 to 7 years for me. So for you guys, it'll probably take a few months of watching. So thank you so much for hanging out, and let's get started. So where I am in my story is I had just left the psych ward. I was on risperadone to even me out. I was also on plaquenil, and that's it. So risperadone and plaquenil were the only two things that I was on at that point. And they had gotten me off of all of steroids, and they had done that pretty quickly. So after my husband got off work that Monday, he came and got me at the psych ward. We had to go and get a refill for my plaquenil and also for my risperadone. And that was a really tough night. I was scared to be back. I was scared that I was going to have psychosis again. I was scared of the risperadone that I was taking because it really fogged me up and it made me really depressed, like tons of anxiety and loads of depression. That was a really tough night for me. Added to that, I had gotten off the steroids so quickly that I had a lot of pain. So I was home for one night, and then I was supposed to go to my sister to give my husband a break. We went to the primary care doctor the next day before I was set to go to my sister's, and his bedside manner was absolute shit. He kind of made it sound like the psychosis was my fault. This could have been the state I was in, interpreting it that way, but he definitely could have had a much better bedside manner. I went to my sister's in Lafayette, which was about an hour north of where I was living in Indianapolis. As soon as I got there, I slept almost the entire time. It was hard for me to get up. My joints were very weak. My arms and legs were very weak. My muscles felt rigid and tense the whole time. Rigidity can be a side effect of the risperadone. So that was something they were kind of keeping an eye on. My grandfather had cerebral palsy when he was living with us when I was a kid, and symptoms that mimic cerebral palsy are also side effects of risperadone. I would shake, I couldn't maneuver my hands very well. It was all very scary being on this new medication. I would sleep for a really long time at my sister's, and then I would wake up just for maybe an hour or two, and then I would just be so exhausted I would sleep again. It got to the point where I was really afraid to fall back asleep because I felt like I couldn't breathe in fully. I felt like this weakness coming on me, and I felt like I was sleeping longer and longer every time. I felt like if I fell asleep again, I was gonna die. So I called my husband. He and my sister and her husband and I all decided that it was best I go back to the ER. So I went to the ER in Lafayette. They didn't really know what to do with me. I was a very complicated case, and I had just gotten out of the psych ward in Indianapolis. So they put me on an ambulance back down to Indianapolis where I could be at the hospital where my primary care doctor could practice and be my hospital doctor there as well. So that took about all night. I finally made it to the hospital in Indianapolis around 5:30 a.m. the next morning. I was checked in by 7, and then I slept all day. I don't remember anything between getting checked in and my husband coming to see me after he was off work. Since he was working this whole time, I spent the next 5 days in the hospital alone. Basically what they found out was that I had been weaned off of steroids too quickly, and the lupus had flared up to a very dangerous level where I was not able to move. It was affecting my heart. I was basically bedridden again. Added to this, I was on risperadone, which had another kind of muting effect of all my energy. So I was not able to walk. I was not able to stay awake for more than a couple hours. The nurses would call my doctor and be very concerned because I was sleeping 18 hours a day. So it became apparent I needed steroids again. Obviously, I had almost a complete emotional breakdown when I heard that this was the case because steroids had made me crazy before. I spoke to my doctor, and he told me that he was going to put me on a very, very mild one to try to get me back to the place where I could go home again. He put me on IV cortisone. I believe he gave me 4 doses of that. It got to the point where I could stand and walk and I wasn't sleeping a bunch of hours a day. After he got me off of those IV and I was still okay, he said he was going to send me home. Again, this was after I had been in the hospital for who knows how many times for 5 days. He said that I could go ahead and go home at that point, but he wanted me to do some walking every single day. He said it was going to hurt, but I needed to do that in order to maintain being upright and not being back in the hospital and needing more steroids. Again, this was very different from anything I had been taught about, oh, if you're sick, you should let your body rest. Lupus is one of those things where resting actually makes it worse. I needed to have some kind of exercise mixed in with giving my body a rest. So after I got out of the hospital, they told me that they wanted me to see a psychiatrist to talk about the psychosis and also talk about my risperadone and get me off of it. I had been seeing a therapist at the time. She is absolutely amazing. I highly recommend anyone going to a therapist at any point in your life, but I was very happy to be seeing this therapist. She actually warned me against it. She said, you are completely off balance right now. You had this really traumatic thing. I would wait 6 months to see a psychiatrist, because if you could see a psychiatrist right now, my fear for you is that you would be automatically diagnosed with something that you might not actually have long term. I did not go see a psychiatrist. I cleared it with all my doctors. If I kept seeing this counselor and then was able to get off of the risperadone under supervision of just my primary care doctor, they said it was all going to be fine and they wanted me to follow up with a psychiatrist in 6 months if I felt like I needed it. I am so thankful for everyone who was on board with me following this plan of action so that I didn't get diagnosed with something that I might not actually have. So after getting out of the hospital, I was on risperadone and I was not on steroids. I did not have the chronic exhaustion that I had before. However, I was still sleeping a lot and I was in extreme pain after getting off the steroids for that amount of time. So depression was my primary struggle at that point. It felt like I was never going to get off the risperadone. It felt like I was never going to feel better again. It definitely crossed my mind that I would be like this for the rest of my life, and what kind of life was that? I definitely had suicidal thoughts, but I didn't tell my doctors about them because I didn't want to go back to the psych ward. So there's the next little chapter of my story. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, or comment. Let me know how you're doing and what your experiences have been. Thanks so much. Bye.